Hey out there, legal warriors. Have you ever wondered what the true role of a criminal defense attorney is in the system? I think the answer I'm going to explain in this video is going to surprise you. So if you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm has been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years. I'm putting up these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. A criminal defense attorney, right? There is one person in our system that stands between the government and someone accused of a crime. One person who's there to make sure the government plays fair, to make sure that the person accused of a crime, the defendant, is treated fairly, and to fight for the accused person's freedom, rights, and justice. And again, that is a criminal defense attorney. And probably what do most of us watching this video think a criminal defense attorney's primary role is? You probably think the main role of a criminal defense attorney is to go gather evidence and interview witnesses and file legal motions and object to things that the government puts forward, that the prosecutor puts forward, and eventually to have a trial and cross-examine witnesses and make arguments to the judge and arguments to the jury, and then the chips fall where they may, and someone's either found guilty or not guilty. And, you know, it makes sense. We think that's a primary role of a defense attorney because that's what we see on TV, right? That's what we see on true crime, right? True crime, TV shows, YouTube stations, that type of thing. They show us the trial. They show us some questioning by the defense attorney, and mainly they show law enforcement's end of things. And so most of us probably think that's the primary role of a criminal defense attorney, right? This trial attorney out there fighting desperately against the government to the last possible second. And I think that is part of the role, but it's a very minor part of the role. So I'd say, is that the primary role of a criminal defense attorney? I would say no. So what are the primary roles of a criminal defense attorney? How can a criminal defense attorney help you or help your loved one if we're charged with a crime? And I put out there a controversial position. I think that's the last thing in most cases that a criminal defense attorney should be doing. Now, in major felony cases where there's no ability to negotiate, and we're just looking at a straight fact trial, well, there I'm going to agree. But, 95% of cases are nowhere near that. If you're accused of a crime, that's highly, highly likely you're accused of an everyday gross misdemeanor type crime, driving under the influence, domestic violence assault, theft, hit and run, reckless driving, maybe some type of low-level felony offense, drug offense, something like that. And in that case, the other roles of a criminal defense attorney are really the ones that matter. And what are those roles? Well, I think the first role is going to be what I call the counselor role, okay? The counselor role is where the defense attorney listens to what happened from the client and then tries to deal with the emotional anxiety of the client, right? There's nothing worse than being accused of a crime, at least not much worse I can think of, and then having no control over what's going to happen to your entire future and the outcome. And that's hard to deal with, right? I can think of plenty of examples where a client of mine is punishing themselves way worse than the system ever would. If we commit a crime or accused of committing a crime, we often think we're defective. We think there's something wrong with us. And then even worse, we don't know how to deal with our families. We may be getting messaging from our parents or our partners or our children that we're terrible, that they're worthless, that we are bad. And then that's really makes it hard to live. And why is that important that we start to affect the thoughts of someone accused of a crime and try to give them an alternative way to think about things? It's because this case is going to go on for months and months, if not a year or more. A lot of these cases will go that long before we get a result that's favorable, hopefully, to the defendant. And so what we can do as a criminal defense attorney, a good one, will push back against that and say, there's nothing wrong with you because you're accused of a crime. It may feel like it's life or death. It may feel like there's no end in sight. It may feel like it's all or nothing. But those things, they're normal feelings, but they're not actually accurate, right? They're not real life. There is almost always going to be a way where the accused person can do some things to help themselves, so we can try to get their side of the story out to the prosecutor, right? And there's not going to be an all or nothing. There's usually going to be a negotiated result that doesn't require all the trial work and the pressure of a jury deciding if you're innocent or guilty. So I think one of the first roles as a counselor that the criminal defense attorney does, when people ask me, I interview a lot of attorneys looking for jobs, and I've had a really astute young man one time ask me, Lance, what is the best piece of advice you could give me as a aspiring defense attorney, growing up in the system? And I said, get as much personal therapy as you can, because the more that you can understand how you work and how our mind goes to very dark and negative and scary and anxiety-based places, the more you can understand how that works and how to turn that off on yourself, the more you can do such a great job for your client. Because that is one of the primary roles of a really great defense attorney, is helping us sleep again at night and get through this system. Okay, so counselor is number one. I think number two is advisor, right? The primary role of a defense attorney isn't necessarily out there gathering facts. It's advising, right? It's telling the client what to do. It's advising the client steps they can take to improve their chances in court. In a DUI case, it might be get an alcohol and drug evaluation, do an alcohol information school, do a DUI victims panel. In a domestic violence case, it might be do domestic violence moral recognition therapy, do anger management. And no, these classes aren't admissions of guilt. They're just ways to make you improve yourself, and also give the prosecutor a way to feel they've responded to the case, so then we're able to hear the factual defenses that we develop, hopefully, in your case. Advise you how to deal with your work, advise you how to deal with your loved ones, advise you how to deal with the feelings, again, almost the counseling side that come along with this. So advisor, you need a defense attorney that's been around the block and has some life experience, and so they can, have real life examples of what you should do to help yourself and to help your case. So I think, again, number two, the role of a defense attorney is advisor. I think the third role I'm going to call advocate. Okay. The advocate role is different than the trial attorney role. The trial role is arguing to the jury, hey, they didn't prove the case, therefore you must find them not guilty. I mean, when you get to that point, you've probably already lost, okay, because you've given up all these other options to find a way out. But advocate is where your defense attorney goes to the government, to the prosecutor, to the court, and advocates for you about what did the police miss? What is the angle that's not there? What isn't known about the client? An example would be, hey, we can't excuse this theft, but in advocating for you, client, the client whose father had just passed away a month ago, and therefore their depression, you know what, prosecutor? People that are depressed sometimes do things out of character to change a mental belief, a mental feeling, a physical feeling. And some people steal, just petty theft, even though things they don't need, and they don't know why they did it. But the advocate role is, yes, my client took that item from Nordstrom or from, Fred Meyer or from wherever, but why we can't excuse it, here's the reason why. And here's where we have to understand what we're doing about it now so it doesn't happen again. And prosecutor, it's your job to provide the gray to the black and white of the law. It's not just your job to convict, it's your job to do justice. So in advocating for a client, you're getting out some things that are not just in the black and white in the four corners of the police report. And you're trying to convince another human being, the prosecutor, to treat your client as a human being and to provide some gray to the black and white that is written in our laws here in Washington State. So I think advocate is a third role. And I think the fourth role I'm going to call fortune teller, okay? The crystal ball, okay? It's really important that your attorney is able to see into the future, is to able to see 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. How is one action that we could do in a case going to affect the case or your life 2 or 3 steps later? right? If we decide to go out and interview witnesses right away, how is that going to affect the motivation of that witness to participate? Let's say there's a stranger victim in an assault case. If your defense attorney gets really aggressive really quickly, it may motivate that witness to be more interested in the case than they would if we reached out to them 6 months after the fact and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. Or, if we take a certain result in a case or look at a certain result, what type of reaction might that cause later in your form of employment, right? How will taking a certain level of reduction from DUI to a lesser charge affect a non-citizen? How will it affect someone who's got a medical license? How will it affect someone who has, a home health aid license? Each of those things are different. And so I think one of the most underrated roles of a defense attorney is that fortune teller, that crystal ball. It's that looking ahead and anticipating what might happen in the real world based upon human behavior, right? And how that can affect things. How quickly, if at all, do we reach out to the police if they want to talk to us? And how may that affect police behavior when they have stacks and stacks of police reports? If we talk too early, will that reactivate interest in the case, right? If we wait too long to talk, what will that mean? When I say talk, that means decide if we want to talk or just even reach out to the police altogether. So, human behavior is complicated, and human behavior is 100% what controls the outcome in criminal cases. And so I think those 4 primary roles I just mentioned, right? Counselor, advocate, advisor, and we'll say the crystal ball reader, telling the future. I think those are the 4 primary roles of a criminal defense attorney. I think the final and 5th role is not the primary role, and that's the trial attorney, right? Where we're out there doing the legal work and taking the actions in court based upon the law to try to get a result. That's probably only 20% of the job. And if it gets that far, usually the results aren't going to be too good. So I hope this has been, enlightened some people about what a good defense attorney is. In my opinion, when I hear someone call and say, "I want an aggressive attorney," I know they just don't know what they're talking about, right? They've never been in this situation before. Aggressive just means, go straight towards trial and ignore those other 4 areas. And I think that's terrible. I think that's lazy attorney work. And that's not what we do. First, we do that last. If we can't get the result through the other ways, then we do that. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't go 5 back to 1, because once you go straight towards a trial, you can't go back and do the rest. It's just not how it works. So if you found this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. And more importantly, if you have a legal problem in Washington State, a criminal matter, feel free to give my office a call. If we get on board, we'll definitely listen to what happened. We'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.